guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range to talk about one of my favorite World War II self-loading rifles. And if you'll notice, there's something that I can pretty much do every video. That's to say, I want to show you that's something that's my favorite, whatever. Can you see a pattern here? Yeah, see, this is the mindset of a gun collector. Every single gun you own is one of your favorites. That's why you have so many and you can't get rid of them, because you treat them like they're your children. You love them and cherish them mostly for their history in my case. So what I want to talk about is a very iconic self-loading rifle from World War II that some folks may not know about. Now, most people that are history buffs and followed the Second World War will know of this rifle, and I'm going to talk about the G43/K43. But some folks may not, and it shoots the 8mm Mauser. But in 1936, the United States military adopted this beautiful piece of hunk of steel and walnut, and that is the M1 Garand, sometimes pronounced M1 Garand. The U.S. military called it the Garand, and that's why I call it the Garand. But the M1 Garand was one of the earliest self-loading rifles adopted by any major world military. And this, guys, is absolutely a beautiful, functioning weapon. Probably, well, as was once said by a great man, the best battle implement ever devised. And I can see why. The guns worked very, very well. They were fast to load. They were accurate. They handled the recoil of the 30-06 cartridge extremely well. And these actually do feed from clips. This is an end block clip, and I have some 30-06 ammunition in here. And to load the M1 Garand, which would have been our service rifle going right into the Second World War. Of course, 1903 Springfields were still in common use, but in 1936 we started to adopt and field this rifle. So by the time we got involved with the war, we were using these rifles, especially in the European theater, quite extensively. But to charge the weapon is super fast and easy, and it works as good, in my opinion, as a magazine that you would stick in the bottom. The end block clip system for the M1 Garand was, you know, very, very cool. Now, not the first rifle to use such a clip, but there were bolt actions that used it, but still, just how it was integrated into this weapon was phenomenal. So we're going to start off shooting the US M1 Garand, and then we're going to shoot a K43, one of several rifles that I have. This one I want to show you is well battle worn, and I think that gives it even more mystique and more history, obviously. All right, so let's fire off our 8 rounds of 30-06. And you hear that cha-ching, and she's empty. Extremely robust, reliable, accurate, absolutely gorgeous. One of the best military rifles of U.S. history, perhaps of history, period. All right, maybe I'm going a little bit too far. Some of you guys are going to go, oh no, it's the M16, it's the M14, it's the Craig Jorgensen, whatever. But I think few would argue that the M1 Garand is an American classic. Now let's take a look at the rifle that everybody calls Hitler's Garand, which is the K43 and G43. In my hands, I have a K43. Now, some of you may know this rifle as the G43, and both is correct. It just depends on the markings on the gun. It went through a nomenclature change during the war. It started off as the G43 or the Gewehr 43, but then it was renamed the K43 or carbiner for carbine rifle because it's about the same length as the K98 rifle. So they're going to have pretty much the same features, but as the guns went on into the war, they would change, they would evolve, they would become more simplified, and they would become more crude as the war effort ground on to the ultimate demise of Nazi Germany when it fell to the Allies. So what we have here is a Walther-produced K43, and this one has some late war features on it. Now, most notably, you're going to find on many G43s and even other K43s, there's a lever that would be included in the bolt carrier here that would be for manually locking the bolt to the rear. This rifle lacks that. Okay, so that was deleted. This is an end of the war simplification. Here we have a simple dust cover that is manually pushed forward to protect the internals of the gun from the harsh conditions of the Eastern Front. Earlier versions would have had a little system that was attached to the bolt carrier that would pull this closed after each shot so the gun remained sealed. So a number of different evolutionary changes would take place with this rifle throughout the war. Now you'll also notice that the finish is really bad, very common. This one definitely has seen battle. The finish is very bad. You'll notice that all the forged parts are in the rough state. They're not finally finished. Now all the internal parts would be properly finished and machined to very, exacting tolerances because they were functionally necessary to be that way. But externally, anything that could be spared in terms of cosmetics was, because the Germans were losing the war and they were trying to get this rifle into the field. Now, from my understanding of history, and I'm by no means a historian, these were primarily fielded on the Eastern Front. Now, there's something you should know about these rifles. If you pick one up at a gun store, at a gun show, off gun broker, know that shooting modern 8mm ammunition out of these, you're going to break the rifle. It's not a matter of if, it's more likely when. And that's because most of these rifles were way overgassed from the factory when the Germans manufactured them. The gas system on this rifle was intended to make the gun operate with little to no maintenance in the extreme cold conditions of the Eastern Front, fighting in Russia. So the guns would beat themselves to death very quickly. This bolt carrier will come back with such force that it will start to peen the rear of the receiver and peen the rear of the bolt itself and destroy it. You also see peening of the gas rod. And we'll talk a little bit about the gas system on this rifle as well. I'll take the top handguard off here in a little bit. This is an evolutionary step from the K41, because the Germans were messing around with self-loading rifles in the 30s, and they just couldn't get them into the field. By the time war broke out, they just went with what they had, which was the K98. But they were working on a self-loading rifle, as were the French and many other nations. But they just didn't get them into the field like the US did in the same numbers that we did. So this rifle started off as the K41, which had this intricate gas trap system on the end of the barrel that was just not very reliable. It reminds me of John Browning's early work when he was tinkering with gas systems. And so that system was decided it was inferior to a short stroke gas piston, which is what this system now has. So you have a gas piston in here, a gas port comes back, you have a rod come back, tap this, think of an FAL or an SKS or an SVT-40, which is what this gas system was pretty much stolen from historical accounts that I've read. Not necessarily stolen, but the idea for the gas system of this rifle came from the Russians' SVT-40. So anyway, this rifle, we're going to go ahead and load up. This is the bolt and carrier, and it seems like the spring's a little bit weak, but it has a brand new Wolf spring in it. This one has a shooter's kit in it, which you can find online, and you must put that shooter's kit in here, and that replaces the gas system that you can tune it then to modern ammo so you don't destroy a classic rifle like this and take your original gas system components, put them in a bag and set them aside. That way you have a functioning rifle that won't beat itself to death. This one has the shooter's kit in it. I'll show it to you here momentarily. All right, so to load this weapon, because I can't manually lock the bolt to the rear because this is a later war production gun, I have a 10-round magazine. The guns would have been issued, I believe, with 3 of these, and they would be inserted like an AK. It's a rock and lock type of magazine, so you have a toe in the front, rocks back, and you have your little release here that's knurled so you can grab it and quickly change magazines. But as the war ground on and the Germans fought with production issues, more than likely these rifles would have wound up with 1 magazine, and soldiers would have loaded them via stripper clips, and they use standard Mauser K98 stripper clips. All right, so I have the magazine in the weapon. It's definitely set up for a right-handed shooter. Charging handle's right here. Pull it to the rear, let it go, and this is your safety. Okay, that would be safe. And then flipping this little lever to the other side would be fire. All right, so that's your safety mechanism. Very simple, standard sights for military rifles of the era, but these are sweet shooting little guns for an 8mm. As you can see, the gun locks open on the last shot fired. Now, the locking mechanism of this rifle is also very interesting. It uses a flapper locking system. Think of the DPM machine or the DP machine gun, or maybe even the RPD. It has flappers inside there that that lock it. So it's not roller locked, it's flapper locked. But it's a very robust system, even though it looks very crude. Now, this one's missing most of its original finish because this one, like I said, probably saw a lot of combat. Ironically and luckily, the receiver, which you probably won't be able to see, the serial numbers match on the bolt and carrier and on the receiver. So in that regard, this rifle's cool. Now, this one I consider to be a shooter, and I have no intention of ever making this thing look brand new. Now, the wood stocks are actually really good shape. It's just the metal components show some pretty hard use in the battlefield. So now I've stuck a stripper clip in there for a K98 Mauser, and I can just push those rounds down into the 10-round box magazine. Grab another 5 because it does hold 10. Just set that stripper clip in its little guide there, and there you go. And now charge the weapon and resume shooting. Surprisingly reliable rifle. Well, not really. The Germans are known for building quality stuff, but if you would look at this thing externally, you would swear up, down, left, right, and sideways that there's no way it would work given how rough it looks. But this old battle horse is still quite functional, strong rifling, and still shoots very, very accurately. So let's talk about the rear sight here really quick on the K43. Now, I did mention before it's very similar to other sights of the era, which you have a little push button here, and you can slide it up, and it's graduated out to 1,200 meters. The rifle has its 10-round magazine loaded already, so I'm going to go ahead and charge it. And right behind me, I have the Safety Sally ice hole. And we're going to go ahead and do some shooting at the ice to just to keep our friends in check that like to critique everything that we do. Shooting over water is bad. Shooting over ice is even worse, with the exception of I actually know what's over there. Now, I talked about the safeties of the M1 Garand and the SVT-40. Those safeties are very, very quick into action. With the Garand, you just push forward and pull the trigger to fire. With the SVT-40, you just push and then you can pull the trigger and fire. The controls are right inside the trigger guard. With the G43 and the K43, you have to rotate this lever all the way over. So it's not quite as fast into action. Now, you'll notice I also just closed that dust cover, which will open up on the first shot fired. So the safety isn't quite as robust as the other rifles, but still, from a shooter's perspective, this thing really, really tames that 8mm cartridge considerably. Let's do a little bit of close-up shots here. Looks like she's a little bit low. I'm gonna try a little further out. Yeah, she's low. You know what I'll do? I'll raise it up. Let's put it at 300 and see. A little closer. Now, the bad thing is the front sight's not adjustable for elevation other than you can grind it down. This one does still have its protective hood. Many times you'll find them missing that protective hood. No, I'm not putting my finger in front of the muzzle for the Safety Sallies out there. They're going to scream foul. Wow, I love shooting this thing. Don't shoot it nearly enough. Now, like I said, I do have another one that has the scope on it, and it's in much better condition. All of them would have been manufactured, that I know of, with the scope rail right here on the side. Now, the Germans were using them as DMRs, not necessarily sniper rifles. So you could quickly slap a scope on there and use it as a designated marksman's rifle, which would increase the hit probability in the combat environment. And a lot of countries were doing that at that time, right? And it wasn't the first time the Germans had done it either. I have a K98 Mauser that has a ZF41 scope on it. I'll break that out for a future video. And they even applied that concept to their bolt action rifles before they did it with the G and K43 rifles. But I do have one in much better condition. Now, if you get online and you see a lot of the guys that that have these, they're in almost perfect condition. There's 100% blue and the stocks look brand new. Those are almost assuredly been refinished. Now, some of them would have been found after the war in really good condition, but anything that saw battle on the Eastern Front would have battle scars. And so either they're refinished or they got their hands on an extremely rare unissued rifle that didn't see any combat. Otherwise, they're going to just look as rough as this one. Maybe a little bit better. This one's a little bit rougher than most, but the reason I bought this one is because it had a brand new shiny bore. So, yeah. I love it. I really do. I love them all. I'm not going to fully disassemble the rifle because there's plenty of other videos out there to show you how to disassemble the K43 or the G43 rifles. Mine's a little bit different, this one anyway, because it doesn't have that manual lock open back here, which is part of the disassembly method for most of the rifles. You would lock this bolt to the rear, then this whole assembly just lifts out very easily. But because mine lacks that manual bolt hold open, the whole mechanism wants to come apart when you take the gun apart. But I did promise to show you the gas system, so I'm going to do that here really quick. I'm going to use the tip of a bullet. Release that spring, take that end cap off. And here you can see the gas system of the K43. Now it's a 3-piece gas system. You have one piece here, a middle piece, and then this tappet. Now this tappet's still the original component. Now whoever had this rifle before me did shoot it without the shooter's kit in it. The shiny parts that you see here are the shooter's kit. They did shoot it with the original parts, and they peened the end of the rod, so it's flared out, it's mushroomed out a little bit, and that's what happens when you shoot these guns without a shooter's kit in them. So the shooter's kit now allows me to not have to worry about peening it anymore and causing any more damage to the rifle. But you can see how the gas system works on the gun. It comes back quite a distance here, but that acts on the bolt carrier, and that's how that little tappet system works. Again, very reminiscent of rifles like the SVT-40 or gosh, the SKS or FAL, things like that. All right, so there's the gas system. Now, like I've said before, shooting these old guns, you really do run the risk of breaking something. And yeah, I mean, this one has some battle scars on it. It even has a crack, a slight crack in the receiver here, which could have happened, you know, in the manufacturing process. You know, it's a superficial crack that's really based around the sight tower, but still very rigid. But I mean, this gun, I mean, who knows what kind of battle it's seen. So you want to be very careful when you use these old guns, and handle them very, very gingerly, so future generations can enjoy them as well. Guys, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, we are consumer advocates. We take no industry money. We don't get guns in with paychecks to tell you how wonderful they are. We are 100% viewer supported, which means we are your advocate. We'll say what we want, when we want, however we want, and you enable us to do that through Patreon. There is a link down below. Please consider following that link. Check out some of the perks. And once you become part of the Patreon family by clicking the Become Patreon button, you'll see that we have extra content, live stream videos every week, and blog posts, and direct access to me and Jason, and all sorts of good stuff, and our lens posts like we posted today. Another great way to support us is to pick up a t-shirt from our Forged from Freedom t-shirt store. We even have hoodies and sweaters. We got some Christmas stuff coming up. If you live in a cold area like we do, it's 20 degrees today, you may want to pick up a hoodie or a sweater. That directly supports us here at the channel as well. And last but not least, be sure to check us out at coppercustom.com. All right, guys, thanks for 10 years of support. I'm going to go ahead, charge my last 10 rounds of 8mm Mauser, and we will see you guys very, very soon. Thanks for the support. I can shoot this thing all day long. What a beautiful piece of history. Yeah, in the end, the American Garand is probably the superior rifle. But boy, this thing's a dream to shoot. Bye, guys. This is one of my SVT 40s. This rifle is a very robust self-loading 54R semi-automatic rifle. It's small, lightweight, very narrow, very nimble. It feels faster in the shoulder than the M1 Garand, which feels a little bit big and clumsy by comparison. And the same thing with the K43. It feels more like the M1 Garand, very big, heavy, and clumsy by comparison to this rifle. This rifle is just so narrow and thin and lightweight, but yet handles the recoil of the 54R extremely well. This is one of my favorite rifles from World War II. I mean, this gun is amazing in its design. And again, its gas system is very similar to what the Germans wound up using in the G/K43. Now here is a 10-round magazine loaded up for the SVT-40. We're using some Red Army standard ammunition, which is just standard 54R ball, and it's a rimmed cartridge. And that's why you see that steep curvature to the magazine. Locks into place. And yeah, these would have been issued with one magazine, most likely, and then fed via stripper clips. All right, pull the bolt to the rear, let it go, and the gun's ready to fire. Just a very, very simple, robust rifle. Make sure my cleaning rod isn't going to come out there. But the safety mechanism is a little bit hard to see here. Here's your safety mechanism. So you can see how it blocks the trigger. Very ingenious. I thought the M1 Garand had an ingenious safety lever. This one is just as ingenious. So it blocks the travel of the trigger. And then when you want to knock it off, you just poke your finger through, then put your finger on the trigger. The M1 Garand requires you to put your finger on the trigger and push forward and then pull back to fire. So either way, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but it's a very, very well thought out rifle just in general. So let's do a little bit of shooting with this old warhorse. Now watch how flat this gun shoots.